Hey there, fellow knowledge seeker. Ready to turn your love of pottery into an actual job, get paid for it.
Exactly. We're talking about how to totally rock that interview for a ceramic painting job.
We've got some awesome resources lined up, like think career guides, interview tips, all that good stuff to
Yeah.
help you go from like dreaming about art to actually having a career in it.
And we're not just talking about, the basics of glazing and firing here. We're going to prep you for those tricky questions that might come up, like showing off your skills and understanding how the business side of ceramics
I
works.
love it. Let's dive right in. This ceramic painter career guide is super interesting. It mentions like designing for all sorts of stuff. I mean, we're talking little teacups all the way up to huge sculptures. Wild.
It really shows you how many different things you can do in this field. But before you go designing, a whole museum exhibit, let's talk about a question you're almost definitely going to get right off the bat. Tell us about your experience with ceramic painting, the classic.
Yeah, that's the icebreaker, right? Your big chance to make a good first impression.
Yeah.
But how do you answer that without just like listing every single pottery class you've ever taken?
Think of it like telling the story of you and ceramics. Where did this love affair even begin? Did you go to school for it? Was there like an awesome teacher who inspired you? Or maybe you're self-taught, spend your weekends in the backyard, elbows deep in clay.
So it's about the journey, not just like a boring list of facts.
100%. And don't forget to bring in those specific examples. Talk about projects you've worked on, those techniques you've mastered, even those times you totally messed up but figured it out. That's gold. Like, did you recently try a new glaze or something? Or tackle a crazy complicated design? That's what makes your experience come alive.
Speaking of glazing, this guide really stresses knowing your stuff when it comes to materials. Like, if you choose the wrong clay for a project, disaster. Just imagine you've made this gorgeous porcelain vase, and then bam, it cracks in the kiln because you used a glaze that fires at too low a temperature.
Oh man, a total nightmare. That's exactly why knowing the technical stuff is so important. Which brings us to another question they might throw at you. How do you decide which glaze to use for a ceramic piece?
Ooh. Okay, yeah, that one would make me nervous. It's not like you can just grab any old glaze off the shelf, right?
No way. This is where you really show off that you know your stuff to glaze types, what temperatures they need, and how they react with different clays. For example, you could talk about, the difference between a matte glaze and one that's super shiny, or how the temperature affects the final look, the color, the texture.
It's like showing them you get what's going on at a deeper level. You're not just painting on a surface. You understand all those crazy chemical reactions happening beneath it.
Exactly. You totally get it. And if you really want to blow them away, you could even mention using RoleCatcher to research different glaze companies and what they make. It shows that you're keeping up with everything, always learning new stuff in the industry, right?
RoleCatcher is seriously a game changer when you're prepping for these things. I mean, their AI can analyze job descriptions and then suggest specific examples from your own experience that'll really resonate with those hiring managers. So smart.
Absolutely. Now, let's switch gears for a sec and talk about messing up. Because, let's be real, even pros have those oops moments in the studio.
Oh, tell me about it. One time I thought I could recreate like the Sistine Chapel on my bathroom tiles. Let's just say it ended up looking a little more Picasso.
Well, hopefully your answers in the interview will be a bit less abstract than that. But, the thing is, everyone knows the mistakes happen, especially when you're creating something. What they really care about is how you deal with it. So, how would you answer if they asked, tell us about a time you made a mistake in your work? That's your moment to turn that oops into, a learning experience.
Right, right. So instead of saying, ugh, I accidentally used the wrong glaze on that vase, how do you make it sound impressive to the person who's deciding if they want to hire you?
It's about showing them you can solve problems, that you're always trying to improve. Start by telling them what happened, keep it short. What went wrong? What was the fallout from that? And then walk them through how you dealt with it. How'd you figure out the problem? What did you do to fix it? And most importantly, what you learned from that whole mess.
So it's not about hiding your mistakes.
Yeah.
It's about showing you can learn and grow from them.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of focusing on the bad, emphasize the good that came out of it. Did you find a new technique or figure out a better way to do things because of that mistake?
I like it. Turning those mess-ups into wins. Now, this career guide also talks about different career paths within ceramic painting. It's not all about being, alone in your studio, right?
No, not at all. It talks about all sorts of options. You could freelance, or you could work with other artists in a shared space. You could even work for a big ceramics company, like on their design team.
Wow, so many choices. But I bet each one has, like, its own vibe, its own interview questions.
Hmm.
Say you want to work somewhere with a fast pace, producing lots of ceramics. They'll want to know you can handle juggling lots of projects, right?
Totally. You might get asked something like, how do you manage your time when you've got multiple ceramic painting projects going on at the same time?
Okay, yeah, that's where it gets real. Glazes have to dry, the kiln has its own schedule, plus you got to factor in, like, the creative process itself. You can't just rush inspiration.
You're preaching to the choir. It's all about balance. When you answer this one, talk about how organized you are and how good you are at like prioritizing.
True.
Maybe you use, special apps or something to keep track of everything, or you create super detailed schedules. Maybe you break those huge projects down into like bite-sized chunks you can actually handle.
And if you're the kind of person who loves a good schedule, this is your time to shine. RoleCatcher even has this cool thing where you put in, like, your ideal work style, and it matches you with companies that fit that vibe. So cool.
Now that's what I'm talking about, finding the right place for you. Okay, let's switch gears again. Let's say you're interviewing for like a more senior position, maybe leading a team of artists.
Ooh, okay, leadership skills. What kind of questions should people be ready for if that's the goal?
Get ready for something like, tell us about your experience managing a team of ceramic painters.
Whoa, that's a big one. You're not just an artist now, you're like the coach, the mentor.
For sure.
Yeah.
When you answer this one, talk about how you delegate tasks, giving people the right jobs, talk about giving feedback that helps people grow, about creating a team environment where everyone feels supported and can collaborate. Have you ever mentored someone newer to ceramics, led a group project, things like that?
Those are such good things to have up your sleeve. And RoleCatcher can help you, like, craft a really compelling story around those experiences so they really connect with what the job needs.
It's like having your own, like, personal PR team.
Speaking of standing out,
Yeah.
our trusty career guys mentions how important it is to stay ahead of the game in the ceramics world.
Absolutely. Things are always changing in ceramics, new techniques, different materials, even the technology is changing all the time.
Which brings us to another question you might get. How do you stay current with all the trends and techniques in ceramic painting?
That right there is your chance to show them how passionate you are about learning. Talk about those workshops you went to or like conferences you attended. Mention those online communities you're a part of or any industry magazines you read.
Oh, and don't forget about social media. Following ceramic artists and studios on Instagram, that's a great way to stay inspired and in the loop.
100%. And if you've tried any of those like cutting edge techniques, like 3D printing with ceramics or using digital design in your work, now's the time to brag about it a little.
Speaking of technology, I am so fascinated by what people are doing with 3D printing in ceramics these days. Like, imagine making these intricate, lacy patterns on a teapot. That would be practically impossible to do by hand.
It's pretty mind-blowing what's possible now. 3D printing opens up a whole new world for ceramic artists, The precision you can get, the detail, it's amazing.
It's like the difference between, like, drawing a blueprint by hand and using some super sophisticated software.
You got it. And this takes us to another important part of being a ceramic artist, the business side of things. It's not just about making gorgeous art. It's also about how you market yourself, how you price your work, and how you manage, the money side of things.
Right. Like treating your passion like a business, even if you don't have, like, a fancy studio or anything.
Exactly. And that's what interviewers might be trying to figure out with questions like, how do you decide how much to charge for your ceramic pieces? Or can you walk us through how you handle a client's order from start to finish?
Okay, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. But before we dive into those business questions, let's get back to those questions about, the business side of being a ceramic artist. I gotta say, putting a price on my own stuff always feels kind of weird.
Totally get it. It can be intimidating. But remember, what you create has value. When they ask, how do you determine the pricing for your ceramic pieces? You want to show them you've thought about it. Like you get that material costs matter, right?
Yep.
And how long it takes to make something and how complex the design is, all that.
So it's not just pulling a number out of thin air. It's about knowing what your work is actually worth.
Exactly. You could even mention, researching what other artists charge or if you've used online tools to figure out a fair price.
And speaking of online tools, RoleCatcher has those salary insights, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what other ceramic artists are making, That could be really useful when you're negotiating your rate.
Like having a secret weapon. And while we're talking shop, let's not forget about talking to clients, especially when you're making something for them.
Right, because if you make this amazing thing, but it's like late or not what they asked for, nobody's happy.
Total recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So when they hit you with that, can you walk us through how you handle a client's order from start to finish?
Question, you got to be ready with the system. Okay, walk me through it. What are the key things to hit on?
Start with clear communication. Like, do you make sure you and the client are on the same page about the design and the deadline? How do you keep them updated while you're working? Do you have like a system for if they want to change something or if something goes wrong?
Makes sense. It's about proving you're not just artsy, you're also professional and organized.
Exactly. And if you've got like a client who said something nice about how you communicate or how you handle a project, this is the time to mention that. It's like a mini testimonial.
Love it. So we've covered a ton today, from those technical skills to the business side of being a ceramic artist.
And remember, even if they don't ask you every single one of these questions, just having those answers ready, it'll make you feel so much more confident, and that passion you have, it'll shine through.
Totally agree. It's about walking into that interview feeling like you've got this. And hey, if anyone out there wants a little extra help, RoleCatcher is there for you.
Seriously, such a good resource. Whether you need help with your resume or you want to practice your interview skills and get feedback from their like super smart AI.
It's like having a career coach on call, 24/7. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of ceramic painting job interviews. Hopefully you've picked up some good tips to help you land that dream job, the one where you can get paid to play with clay all day.
And remember, it doesn't end with the interview. Keep learning those new skills, try out those new techniques and materials, and don't ever stop exploring what you can create with ceramics. It's a wild ride.
So well said. Who knows, maybe one day we'll be checking out your work in a gallery somewhere, or even better, sipping our morning coffee out of a mug you made. But until then, keep the creativity flowing right.